Okay, hello everyone. Good to have you all on board. It's another time with Tutor IO, the Indigenous Tutor, and in today's tutorial, it happens to be a continuation of the course POL312, and in today's class, we're going to be taking our bearing from what it means by model. For those of us who are new to the stream, let's ensure to smash the like button. Let's ensure to subscribe to the channel. And most importantly, let's ensure to join a private class where we walk you through all your courses without leaving any unattended to you. How do you get to become a member of the private class? All you need to do is to reach out to us on our official website, which is www.tutorial.net, and is the WhatsApp button in the top right corner. Send us a direct message. With this being said, let's go straight into today's class. Okay. Now, it says models. According to the thumbnail, we are taking our bearing from model. All right, basically, it's actually model, not models. Okay, so what we'll consider real quickly what it means by model and why we are discussing model in the course of this course. Okay, now when we talk about model in political science, all right, we are simply referring to, all right, model as being essentially a simplified representation, all right, a simplified representation of political reality, all right, a simplified representation of political reality. All right. Now, this political reality helps scholars. Okay. It helps scholars to what? Understand, explain, or predict political behavior. All right. Explanation, all right, prediction, and the understanding of political behavior. All right, it doesn't end there. Not just the political behavior alone. Just a moment. Not just the political behavior alone, but also institutions and processes. All right, political behaviors, institutions, and processes. Are we on the same page? Models are tools that are used for clarification of common phenomenon. When you want to clarify, when you want to comprehend, when you want to do a detailed explanation or in-depth study of political phenomena, then you want to consider the use of model. All right? It is a tool used to clarify complex political phenomena. When seeking the appropriate to for the clarification political phenomenon phenomena. All right. Model is the realistic tool. So we have data steps. One thing you need to understand here is that the technical or the professionally acceptable meaning of model, all right, is based on the notion of isomorphism. All right. I'll take that again. The technical or the professionally acceptable meaning of model is based upon what we refer to as the notion of isomorphism. Are we together? Now, when we talk about isomorphism, what are we referring to? It refers to the similarity between one thing or the other. The similarity between one thing or the other. Then we have isomorphism. Okay? More technically, you need to put into consideration that isomorphism requires, all right, certain qualities. All right? There are certain demands, certain patterns. All right? Isomorphism, all right, should follow. All right? Now, there must be a one-to-one correspondence. All right? We have correspondence between elements. You are not be talking about environment and you are taking point from something completely outside the, all right, the set or the subject environment. So there has to be correspondence between all the elements that you are using to understand or comprehend or further simplify a particular phenomena. Now, also, we have that as that. That was the thing from the service provider. I think we are stable now. Can we all hear me? Say that again. Now, just like I was explaining, all right, isomorphism is usually, all right, is usually thought to hold between two. The expectation of isomorphism is the capacity of holding, all right, the thought between two theories. We are saying the same, all right? It could be between two theories or more explicitly, including their laws, all right? This is what we will take as the core meaning of model. So basically, when we talk about isomorphism, we are still indirectly referring to models. Please, if you're on the stream and you have not smashed like button, fair enough. Do ensure to smash like button right away. So very quickly, let's talk about the function of scientific concepts. Okay, the function of scientific concepts in political inquiry. All right, scientific concept in political inquiry. Now, when we talk about the function of scientific concept in political inquiry, what are we simply referring to? And one thing is that we need to understand pretty well that we talked about concepts in our retrospect in one of our retrospective classes. And one thing we're able to establish then was that concepts are used to describe political phenomena. All right, they are used to describe political phenomena. More can be said about the descriptive quality. All right, so one of the quality of concept is the descriptive quality. All right, so more can be said about the descriptive quality of concepts than that they are used to identify just political phenomena. So now, this descriptive concept of political phenomena, all right, the descriptive quality of concepts in the describing of political phenomena is just one aspect, is just one capacity, one quality to what concept is capable of doing when it comes to, all right, political discussion of political phenomena. So now let's take it one step at a time. Let's also consider other things like the classificatory function of concepts. Let's consider the classificatory. So under the function, all right, function of scientific concept. So we have the classificatory. Speaking of the classificatory function of concepts, one thing we must bear in mind is that some concepts provide the basis for classification. All right, there are certain concepts that provide the basis, the foundation for class. Now, this placing of political action, all right, it involves the placing of political actions, the system or the institutions into classes or categories. When we begin to talk about the classification of political actions, when we begin to talk about the classification of political system, when we begin to classify political institutions, what are we simply doing? We are using the function of what is called a concept. Are we together? So we have that as that. So we also have the comparative function. Comparative from compare. Okay, when we talk about comparative, you can consider compare. So now this function, the comparative function of concepts, what are we simply referring to? We are considering, all right, we are considering certain things. The ability all right, the ability, the option provided by this function of concept, which is the option of analyzing and understanding political phenomena across different contexts. But the bottom line here is scientific. The bottom line is that political scientists have the option of comparing political system. All right. Institutions and behaviors across countries or time period. This is why this matters. All right. Because it helps in the generalization, all right, it helps in the generalizing political knowledge and in the identification of patterns that may not be visible if we study it on one case of isolation. So because of we don't want our case of isolation or a single individual study case, then we begin to make comparison. All right, we begin to make comparison of federalism in Nigeria and federalism in other African states. Then we can now understand in-depthly, begin to analyze and collect certain information about federalism because of this, the comparative function of concepts. So we have that as that. So we also have the qualification function of concept. The qualification function of concept. Now, the qualification function of concept refers to the ability. I beg your pardon, not qualification, that's quantification. Quantification. I beg your pardon. Please note that it is quantification. I know when we talk about quantification, we're talking about quantity. All right, we are referring to quantity. All right, so this is the ability. So this it is the ability. All right, the quantification function of concept refers to the what? The ability to measure or assign numerical values to phenomenon. I'll take that again. The quantification function of concept refers to the words ability to measure or assign numerical value to political phenomena. So very quickly, I want us to move straight ahead to data and political inquiry. Like I said earlier, for those of us who have not joined the private class, let's ensure to sign up today. All you need to do is to reach out to us on our official website, which is www.tutorio.net. You'll find the WhatsApp button in the top right hand corner. You can use the WhatsApp button to send us a direct message. And I want this opportunity to also encourage us. A whole lot of students are not aware of our classes. All right. A whole lot of students are not aware of the good work we are doing. All right. So it is the responsibility of yourself and myself to help preach, to help inform, to help get this channel to a whole lot of students. And how can we achieve that together? A lot of groups you might have access to, and unfortunately, I do not have access to such groups. So it's only fair for you to communicate with the admin of such groups and let them be aware that if it is okay, I can post the invitation of certain classes on our page. And trust me, a lot of students we might get the attention of a lot of students and definitely join the class. They find it helpful just as you have. All right. So let's continue. We have data and political inquiry. Data is not a new phenomenon. I believe it's something we have heard of before now. In our GS 103, we talked about what data are in length. All right, but this is political science. This is POL312. All right, it might be a little bit different. All right, but it's still in line with what we already know. When we talk about data, all right, according to what we have here, data is more of information. All right, data, as far as we are concerned in this course, is information. All right, data are originally data are facts. All right, unprocessed facts. When they become processed, then they are information. But as far as this course is concerned, data are being referred to as information. Okay, they are being referred to as information. So, having know what data is, remember we're talking about political inquiry. We're talking about asking questions, gathering certain answers, figuring out what certain things means politically. All right. So, we'll talk about straight ahead data collection. When we talk about data collection, we are referring to the science and art of acquiring information. Okay, the science and art the science and art of acquiring information about sampled units that are likely to be of interest. All right, scientific or science and art of acquiring information. Science and art information, not just any kind of information, but information that interests, all right, the researcher or the scientist. Information about sample units. all right, of interest the researcher. Now, it is a process of obtaining relevant information regarding the major idea in study. So before you cannot be successful with your study if you don't have enough data at your disposal. All right. So it is said to be that process of obtaining important information as regard to the major idea in your study. Now, data are not just collected for collecting sake. All right, there's a reason behind it because it involves a whole lot of processes. So the reason why you are collecting data is because, all right, data are not just collected for collecting sake, but they are gathered regarding the major idea in the study. Like I said, your study solely depends on the data available at your disposal. So since data gathering is a primary effort aimed at understanding social life through the discovering of new facts, documentation of old ones or its rejection, and also trying to establish relation between variables. All right? Data gathering is a primary effort. So it's an effort you must put. All right? You must put in some serious primary effort, as well as to understand. Remember, you're not getting this information or gathering this information from inanimate objects. All right, we are gathering this information about people, individuals. So you need to understand their social life. And how do you get to do that? You need to discover new facts. And how do you get to discover new facts? You need to collect it. You need to go out for it. You collect them, you document it, know the ones to reject, know the ones you are using. All right, and you need to correlate this information among different variables. Are we together? So having understand what we refer to as data collection, real quickly, let's talk about data analysis. Now, this data analysis, you've done your primary effort, you've put in the primary effort of collecting already. So you don't just end at collecting. You want to talk about data collected for any inquiry or generated must be what? Analyzed in order to interpret their meaning. So you analyze for the purpose of interpretation. For the purpose of interpretation, you definitely need to analyze. Then having done that, you want to talk about data interpretation. All right. Data interpretation is one thing to analyze, and it's another thing to ask to interpret the data. Now, when we take data interpretation, it is more or less the last step in research procedure. All right, it is more or less the last step in a research procedure to finding solutions or, all right, the way forward to a problem under the investigation. By the way, by the time you are able to interpret this data, I mean, you've been able to arrive at a reasonable conclusion. The last step. So now, we've been able to dissect all the processes, but it doesn't end there. We have just talked about the dissecting of the process of collecting this information or data, but there's something we have not talked about, which is how you get this information, how you go about we will definitely need to collect before you can even interpret or analyze between variables, reject or not. So we're going to be talking about in our next class questionnaire. All right, and from there we'll finish the course tomorrow. All right, so note we're taking over from questionnaire and we're going to finish this course tomorrow. Thank you very much, everyone. I believe I've been able to gain something in today's class. Please let us ensure to keep our notes up to date and send them to the appropriate quarters. Do have a wonderful evening and bye for now.